Welcome to Impact OC, the only program showcasing the people and organizations shaping Orange County. With your host, Don Camber.
Hello, live from the OC Talk Radio studios at UCI's Beal Applied Innovation Center. I'm OC Talk Radio Public Affairs Director Don Camber with another great guest positively impacting our community. Today I welcome OC Waste and Recycling Director Tom Katroulis. He oversees Orange County's solid waste disposal system, which provides waste management services, operates public landfills, protects the local environment, invests in renewable energy enterprises, and promotes recycling in order to ensure a safe and healthy community for current and future generations. The department has 3 active landfills, 3 greeneries, and 4 household hazardous waste collection centers. Thank you, Tom, for being on Impact OC.
Thank you for having me.
Tom, today I'd like you to talk about Senate Bill 1383, which sets methane emission reduction targets for California in a statewide effort to reduce emissions of short-lived climate pollutants.
Yeah, this is a monumental bill for the state and a very, I'll say, hefty goal for all jurisdictions to meet. There is a lot of work going around right now to try not only get in infrastructure related to SB 1383, but also get programs implemented so participants, such as residents and businesses, have programs in place so they can divert organics from the landfill.
What are the goals of SB 1383?
The goals are to, I'll say there are many, but the major goals really is to reduce greenhouse gas production by diverting organic material from landfills to compost facilities, such as green waste, food waste, any kind of processable material that could be composted to create soil amendment that could go back into the local communities.
What's the connection between the organic waste and pollutants?
Okay, well, what currently happens with a lot of food waste, when you throw something out, it makes its way to the landfill and it's being buried. And once it's buried, landfill gas is created. Now, landfills, we operate 3 landfills in the county. And when the organics decompose, they create landfill gas, and we're responsible for capturing that landfill gas and destroying it. And we actually take that landfill gas and create renewable energy with it. The challenge is what else can be done with the organics versus burying it in the landfill, creating landfill gas, because landfills have been considered to be one of the contributors to greenhouse gases and the impacts on the environment. So the goal behind SB 1383 is to divert those organics from the landfill to compost facilities to then basically create a product that can go back into the local communities for healthy soils.
Well, now we have a deadline. In January, we have to do this. And I know that you've been in the planning of it for several years.
Yes. And so I'll say the exciting part about SB 1383, it has an enforcement measure. And so starting January 1 of 2024, every jurisdiction, every city, every special district is supposed to have a plan in place, and there's an enforcement measure to ensure that residents are participating and that they're following the programs that have been designed to divert organic material from the landfill.
Explain that.
So the programs, so residents are to take their food waste and then place it, rather than putting it in their trash container. I'll say for the most part, single-family residents may have 3 containers: a trash container, a recycling container, and a green waste container for yard clippings. And so they're to divert the food waste from the trash container and put it in the green waste container, along with their tree trimmings and grass clippings and things of that nature, so it doesn't make its way to the landfill and can go to a compost facility.
And how are they going to do that? And what's the enforcement policy?
All right. So how do they do that? And this is probably the $1 million question, because the residents are going to have to change their behavior. And that means that they are going to have to get the food waste, separate it from how they would normally throw it in the trash, and figure out ways to get it into their green waste container. I'll say there's a method that's been provided where you get a little pail or a bucket. You put it under your sink or on your kitchen counter. So as you prepare the meal, you can separate your food scraps, put it in the container, and then use that container to transport that material to your green waste container.
Explain what organic waste is, and I want you to go through a full list.
A full list. Okay. Organic waste is going to be anything, I'll say, that could decompose and is putrescible, such as organic material such as leaves, branches, tree trimming, grass clippings, your banana peel, your apple core, your half-eaten sandwich. Let's see, your pizza, right?
And parts of your pizza box.
I was going to say even your contaminated pizza box or soiled papers, right? That falls into the organic spectrum.
And it also includes your tea bags.
Oh, yeah. Tea bags, coffee grounds.
Your meat.
Your meats.
Your bones.
Poultry, yes.
What shouldn't go in there? Can kitty litter go in there?
Kitty litter should not be going in there, nor should your pet waste. That should go into your trash container. Because what happens is once that food waste makes it into the green container, it goes to the compost facility. The kitty litter or, let's see, your dog poop, right, is going to be considered a contaminant. And because the composters do not want that in the compost, that needs to go into your trash container.
Talk about the consequences of not compliance.
All right. So under SB 1383, for non-compliance, there is a provision that every jurisdiction is required, number one, to go out and inspect, do what's called a lid flip. Number two, if they discover that you're out of compliance, then they are required to issue a notice of violation. That notice of violation can come with a fine associated with it based off of what ordinance that city has adopted. And so, in particular, residents and businesses can receive a fine from the jurisdiction for noncompliance. This is what's required under SB 1383. And how it works is that if the cities are not out inspecting and taking a look, and they could use a contractor, they could use their hauler. If they're not doing that, then ultimately the enforcement falls back onto the cities for noncompliance through CalRecycle. CalRecycle is the agency that basically creates all the legislation and regulations around waste and recycling. They're also the enforcement measure behind it. And so CalRecycle would then impose fines on the jurisdictions for non-compliance, for not going out, inspecting, and making sure that residents and businesses are participating.
Talk about the department's 3 greeneries, which is very much part of this equation.
Now, I'm excited about this one, very excited about it. This has been a labor of love for myself and the team. We have 3 greeneries right now that are permitted, and we are ramping up operations. Those greeneries are co-located at our landfills, and we started this process about 5 years ago, 6 years ago, and have received permits for all of them. And right now, we have one located in San Juan Capistrano it's the Bee Canyon Greenery. We have one in Irvine San Juan Capistrano's Capistrano Greenery. Irvine is the Bee Canyon Greenery, and in the city of Brea, we have the Valencia Greenery. And so we are permitted right now to receive residential green waste that's already been chipped and ground. And I'll say as an agency, we were receiving that before. So what a lot of people don't know is that the Orange County landfill system was already receiving all of the county's residential green waste that was coming into the landfill, and it was being used as alternative daily cover. That changed in 2020. Because of different regulations and legislations of AB 1594, and that changed everything, meaning that you could no longer use alternative daily cover, which is ADC, at the landfill. And so we built the greeneries to take the green waste that was coming in to compost it. And so of the 3 greeneries now, we are now ramping up operations. We're receiving smaller amounts of green waste, and we're starting to ramp that up. We're including manure composting in that as well. That's another organic. Not many people have horses. However, we're working on composting manure and food waste in that green waste as well. That would come from residents.
Are you saying that manure can go in your green waste pail?
Manure, I would say, depending on who your hauler is right now and what jurisdiction you're in, if you have equestrian waste, such as for manure, and you have horses, then yes, that program will be acceptable or could be acceptable in your green waste container.
But waste from other 4-legged pets, no.
Right. If you have a dog or a cat, iguanas, chickens, ferrets, any kind of those animals, no, you want that to wind up in the container for the landfill.
And in fact, if they put it in, they contaminate the container.
That is correct. That would be considered contamination, and it would not be acceptable for the program.
Getting back to greeneries, you have a big event coming up on November 4th.
Yes, and this is for all Orange County residents, November 4th. At each of our greeneries, we have a free compost giveaway. And so to share with all the residents, and the compost that we produce is STA certified by the U.S. Compost Council, which has the seal of testing assurance. And we welcome those to come out on November 4th from 7:30 to noon. And it will be located at our Bee Canyon Greenery in Irvine, at our Valencia Greenery in Olinda, and our Capistrano Greenery in San Juan Capistrano.
What's the benefit of compost?
There are many benefits of it. I'll say the first one, of course, is if you think about the carbon cycle and how plants work, right? They take nutrients out of the ground. They produce fruit, leaves, flowers. Well, when you add compost back into your soil, it actually puts that nutrients back into the ground, and it helps the plant stay healthy and grow. That's one. The other thing is it actually helps with water retention and helps retain moisture in the soil by providing a platform for it to retain moisture for healthy root growth. Compost is also used to help prevent soil erosion. You can take it it can help prevent soil erosion in projects. And guess what? The best thing about our event, it is at no cost to Orange County residents. They just need to come out, smile on their face, and bring a container to collect it.
Talk about the renewable energy program.
We have at our landfills, we collect and manage landfill gas, which is a highly regulated process, and we take that landfill gas and then convert it to energy. We have energy partners that then we'll put it out on the grid, and right now we have a power purchase agreement with the city of Anaheim, and we're taking the landfill gas rather than flaring it, because the standard is really to take landfill gas, you have to destroy it. We have flares on site, but then we take it and we put it through internal combustion engines that run a turbine that create electricity and put it back out on the grid. And it's roughly enough electricity to power about 25,000 homes in Irvine, and I think it's about 23,000 homes in Brea.
Now, we all had to adjust once upon a time to recycling newspapers and cans and that kind of thing to reduce space at landfills. By having organic waste diverted, will that make a big impact on the landfills?
Well, I would say what the organic waste, that volume represents. Organic waste is roughly almost 50% of the waste coming in to the landfills today. And so if we're able to divert, and the standard is to divert 75% of that material under SB 1383 by the year 2025. And so the goal is to, if we divert that, it will definitely save on not only landfill airspace, but also it will create increased compost for use in the local communities.
Explain who people need to go to if they have more questions, namely their their contracted trash hauler, right? Which then is contracted by the city. Explain that.
Yeah, so depending on what city you live in, and depending on who your hauler is, you can find out what program is being implemented specifically for your service area. You can go to oclandfills.com, and on there you can find out, number one, who your hauler is. Number two, if you want to find out more about the programs in your area, you can visit your city's local webpage, and they will have information on there as well regarding what programs that they have in place, what standards are there. For instance, in some cases, some cities are well ahead of SB 1383 and being compliant and having programs in place. In other cases, some cities are just starting. And so there is variability from city to city. And so I think it's important for residents to go in, find out where they are in the process to ensure that, number one, that they're participating with the right program. They have the right practices in place as far as separating out their organics and making sure that it's making its way into their green waste container. And thirdly, that they're informed. I think it's important that the education and outreach, for instance, a platform like this, we're able to provide information so people understand what's happening and why it's happening.
People complain about the flies that will get into their organic waste when they have the pail, in their kitchen.
And I would say that I've been dealing with waste for many years, and there's one thing that has not changed, is that trash stinks. And that all comes from putrescible waste, right? From the organic fraction of that. And so in dealing with, let's say, flies and things of that nature, that is a challenge that comes with, handling, organic waste. One of the ways you can mitigate it, there are containers that have lids on it. You can keep the lid closed to help mitigate not only odors or vectors, but there are other methods you could do. In some cases, you could put that organic waste in the refrigerator or the freezer until it's time to take it out and place it in the green container. Or you could take it out, and in some cases, and again, this goes back to what programs you have in place with your jurisdictions. In some cases, they do allow it to be placed in bags. It could be a paper bag you could place it in to help mitigate it. Or in some cases, they may even allow a plastic bag.
But they need to get in touch with their trash hauler, which again contracts with their city. But if you live in a county, unincorporated county, then you're dealing with the county.
Yes. So you would definitely have to get in touch with your contracted hauler to determine what program's in place. And I would say at the county, we have 3 different haulers that provide services. And I would say for the county unincorporated area, taking the green waste and taking the food waste and placing it into your container is part of the process right now. And at this point in time, our standards are that you put it in with the green waste and you can place it in a paper bag or wrapped. I think 3 of the haulers right now that collect and process the material, I believe there's only, I would have to verify, but only 1 that would accept plastic bags at this time.
And when it comes to the possible fines, who's going to do the fining?
So when it comes to the fines, part of that inspection process that needs to happen, the county will actually be out, inspecting, within the county service area, providing those inspections. But fines, we're not anticipating to issue fines until we know that everyone's well aware of what the program requires. I think the education and outreach is the most important process. The goal is not to go out heavy-handed and to start issuing fines to get people to comply. We first need to make sure that people are well educated, the residents are educated on what needs to happen, why it needs to happen, before any kind of fines can be issued. And so it's really going to be about education and outreach and working with residents and businesses to change their practices.
Well, speaking of practices, give us an example of a daily practice in life to separate your trash into recyclables, into organics, and to regular trash.
I would say, as far as examples in it, and if we think about residents, right? I think it's always important to have a champion in your household that can ensure that the rest of everyone of your family members or whoever you're living with participates. And I'd say in my household, unfortunately, my wife has become the recycling police. I've been in the industry for a very long time, and I'll say she's a champion at home. But establishing a method or at least a system that you have in place where you have a container for waste that goes to your trash, a place for your, I'll say, standard recycling, such as your plastic bottles, your aluminum cans, and items that have identified that are traditionally recycling. And then now there's a third container that you would need to manage in your house or at your business that would be identified for the organics or the food waste that you would need to then separate that material to ensure that it makes its way to your green waste container.
If you get fast food and there's some remnants of fast food onto a wrapper, can that wrapper go into the organics recycling bin?
Under SB 1383, that actually falls into the organics food sold papers. So that actually would go into your compost container.
The green one?
The green one.
Okay, so people should think about changing in terms of where they put their trash, just like they did with recyclables once upon a time. Once upon a time, we separated our trash, and now we do our recyclables, and now they'll be organics.
Yes, and that's the whole shift in, I would say, not only what's being mandated to, I'll say, divert more material away from the landfill, but it's really a shift in mindset, and it's a change in behavior more than anything else. Because if you think about when, I'll say, AB 939 started in 1990, there was a lot of pushback regarding sort of the implementation of single stream recycling, and they had stackable crates or all these different programs that were being implemented. Fast forward to today, now we have, I'll say, the new AB 939 with SB 1383, and rather than the focus being on sort of the traditional recycling that I think we're now accustomed to, right? We have plastic bottles, we have aluminum cans, we have papers, and metals and things of that nature. Now the focus is really on the, I'll say, it used to be the last frontier with organics, and I think there's a whole different conversation to have regarding film plastics now. But the focus really on SB 1383 is the organics with food waste, putrescible waste, making its way to the landfill. And there's one thing we didn't touch on that I want to mention is edible food recovery.
Go ahead.
And because we talked about sort of the hierarchy of putrescible food as far as the quality of that material because it degrades faster. And under edible food recovery, there's another push under SB 1383 that we have to divert 20% of edible food by 2025. And so part of the challenge is working with businesses and nonprofits to make sure that there is, rather than that food making its way out to, let's say, the organics container or even the trash container, that if it meets a certain standard, that it's making its way to those nonprofits that can actually get that food to those in need. And so that's one of the requirements of SB 1383 as well. From a residential standpoint, it's a little bit more challenging. This is really meant for the amount of food waste that's generated from businesses. But from a business perspective, these are also part of the requirements to ensure that businesses actually have agreements in place if they have food permits and they're generating food waste, that they have a means and method in order to, I'll say, redirect food that could be consumed versus throwing it away.
Sounds to me like they should connect with some nonprofits so that if they have a bunch of hamburgers that are still good, it could be diverted to an organization with homeless people.
Yes, and I would say one of the organizations we've worked with, and there's several, Abound Food Care is one. I'll give a shout out to South County Outreach as another. And then, of course, you have, say, a larger food banks such as Second Harvest Food Bank. That's out there as well. But from the business's standpoint, being able to establish a process, and this is also part of SB 1383 requirements of the cities, that they're working with their businesses, that the restaurants and grocery stores and catering companies, that they actually have contracts in place and a method in place in order to get edible food to those nonprofits to then get it out into the community.
Well, this all goes into effect in terms of the organics in January. How long do you think it'll take for people to really feel comfortable with it?
You know what? If you think about, I'll say, was it the law of innovation, right? You have innovators that are, what are that, the 1 to 3% or 1 to 5% that embrace it up front and are very passionate about it. And then you have the early adopters that take it on. So you got about 5%, 35 to 40% that then adopt it. And then you have the late adopters. As education rolls out, I think, we already have early adopters, the innovators that are participating today, but I think it's going to take a lot more education and outreach over this next year to 2 years. And I don't think it's going to happen as fast as maybe we need it to happen related to the compliance aspect of it, because the variability of from one jurisdiction to the next. And so I think it's going to take a year or two to actually see some kind of impact related to participation. And that's only going to come through education, outreach, and then eventually the enforcement method.
Thank you, OC Waste and Recycling Director Tom Katroulis, for being on Impact OC. And I thank everyone for tuning in. I'm OC Talk Radio Public Affairs Director Dawn Camber. Have an impactful day.
You've been listening to Impact OC, the only program showcasing the people and organizations shaping our community. Right here on Orange County's only community radio station, OC Talk Radio.